Human history is filled with mysterious events, but few are as unsettling as what happened on what seemed to be an ordinary morning in Siberia. In 1908, something crossed the sky and exploded with such enormous force that millions of trees were knocked down in seconds. The strangest part? There was no war, no bomb, and no crater was ever found to explain the explosion. For more than a century, scientists have tried to understand what really happened that day. Some say it was a meteor. Others believe it was a fragment of a comet. But the more researchers investigate the Tunguska event, the more they realize that certain details simply don't fit the traditional explanations. Think about it for a moment. How can something explode with the force of dozens of nuclear bombs, devastate an entire forest, and then almost completely disappear without leaving clear traces behind? That question is what turns the Tunguska Mystery into one of the most intriguing phenomena in modern history. And as we begin to explore what truly happened that morning, we start to realize that the biggest mystery may not be the explosion itself, but the fact that more than 100 years later, humanity is still trying to discover what really fell from the sky. The morning the sky exploded. On the morning of June 30, 1908, the vast region of Siberia seemed to follow its normal rhythm. Endless forests stretched across the land, rivers flowed quietly through untouched wilderness, and small communities lived far away from the rest of the world. Nothing suggested that this day would become one of the greatest mysteries ever recorded. Then suddenly, something extraordinary happened. A blinding flash tore across the sky, as if the horizon itself had been ripped open. Within seconds, what had been a calm morning turned into a phenomenon that would puzzle scientists for generations. Witnesses later described that the sky became so bright that some people believed a second sun had appeared. Moments later came a thunderous roar followed by a powerful shockwave that knocked people to the ground miles away. Imagine living through a normal morning, perhaps tending animals or preparing breakfast, when suddenly the ground trembles beneath your feet and the sky burns with an unnatural light. That moment marked the beginning of what we now call the Tunguska Event, a massive explosion that forever changed that region of Siberia. What witnesses saw in the sky? Some witnesses said that just before the explosion there was an eerie silence in the air, the kind that makes the world feel suspended for a brief moment. Then a brilliant object appeared on the horizon, racing across the sky at incredible speed. This was no ordinary shooting star. People described it as a gigantic glowing fireball moving through the atmosphere like a second sun falling from space. The light was so intense that many had to shield their eyes. As the object crossed the sky, it left behind a bright trail, as if the very air itself were burning. Then came the explosion. A massive blast echoed across the Siberian wilderness, followed by a shockwave powerful enough to shatter windows and throw people to the ground dozens of kilometers away. The devastation in the forest. When explorers later began investigating the region, they expected to find the typical signs of a meteor impact. Instead, they discovered something far more shocking. An enormous section of forest had been flattened. Scientists estimate that more than 80 million trees were knocked down across an area of about 2,000 square kilometers. The trees had fallen outward from a central point, forming a gigantic radial pattern that revealed the direction of the blast. But the most disturbing detail was found at the center of the explosion. Some trees were still standing. Their branches had been completely burned away, leaving only tall charred trunks pointing toward the sky like silent witnesses to a catastrophe. This strange pattern suggested something unusual. The explosion had occurred in the air, not on the ground. The scientific expedition. For years, the Tunguska event remained a distant rumor told by travelers and local inhabitants. The region was remote and extremely difficult to reach. Only decades later did a scientific expedition finally reach the devastated area to study what had happened. The journey itself was challenging. Researchers had to cross dense forests, swamps, and vast wilderness before finally arriving at the center of the destruction. When they saw the massive field of fallen trees stretching for miles in every direction, many of them fell silent. The scale of the devastation was unlike anything they had ever seen before. And yet, something critical was missing. The missing crater. If such a massive explosion had occurred, scientists expected to find a huge crater in the ground. But after carefully examining the entire area, they discovered something baffling. There was no crater. No large fragments of rock. No clear remains of the object responsible for the explosion. It was as if something had descended from space, unleashed unimaginable power, and then vanished. This discovery deepened the mystery of Tunguska and forced scientists to reconsider what might have happened in the sky above Siberia. The most accepted scientific theory. Over time, scientists developed a theory that is now widely accepted. According to this explanation, a small asteroid or comet fragment entered Earth's atmosphere at extremely high speed. As it passed through the atmosphere, the intense pressure and heat caused the object to explode before it could reach the ground. This type of phenomenon is known as an airburst. The explosion likely occurred several kilometers above the surface, releasing energy equivalent to many megatons of TNT. That massive release of energy created the shockwave that flattened millions of trees. But even this explanation does not answer every question. Some details of the Tunguska event still remain difficult to explain. The strangest theories. Because of these unanswered questions, many unusual theories have emerged over the years. Some researchers believe the object may have been a fragment of a comet composed mostly of ice and cosmic dust. Others have proposed far more exotic possibilities. One theory suggests that a tiny fragment of antimatter may have collided with Earth's atmosphere, producing a massive explosion without leaving physical debris. Another idea speculates that a rare atmospheric energy phenomenon could have caused the blast. There are even more controversial theories suggesting experimental energy technologies or unknown space objects. Although most scientists remain skeptical of these ideas, they highlight one important fact. Even today, the Tunguska mystery still leaves room for speculation. What if Tunguska happened today? Perhaps the most unsettling part of the Tunguska event is where it happened. The explosion occurred over one of the most remote forests on Earth. But if the same event happened today over a major city, the consequences would be devastating. A shockwave of that magnitude could destroy buildings, shatter windows for miles, and cause enormous loss of life. This is why scientists now monitor the sky constantly, searching for near-Earth objects that might pose a threat. Even with modern technology, however, the universe remains unpredictable. And events like Tunguska remind us that Earth is still vulnerable to forces far beyond our control. The Tunguska event reminds us that the universe still holds mysteries we have not fully understood. Something exploded over Siberia in 1908 with the force of a massive bomb, yet it left almost no trace of its origin. More than a century later, scientists continue searching for answers. Was it truly an asteroid exploding in the atmosphere? Or could there be something more mysterious behind that explosion? Now I want to hear your thoughts. What do you believe caused the Tunguska event? Leave your theory in the comments. And if you enjoy exploring real mysteries, unexplained phenomena, and the strange events that challenge our understanding of the world, make sure to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Because sometimes, the greatest mysteries in history are still waiting to be solved.